it's always interesting to hear how successful people are thinking, and I appreciate especially some of your comments, balance, really helpful. As a lawyer, one of the things I was really interested to hear from you specifically is, I think one of the concerns we want to address is people just kind of caught in a rent cycle. It's not just that maybe they were having a condition to get into the business situation, or maybe they just don't have that kind of capital. So one scenario I would be interested for you to address, is it possible or attractive, say if there's 3 people in this room that want to buy a $800,000 place in Queens, and actually all 3 of them want to live in it, is there a lender that will take this deal? That's got to be a different deal to a lender than one person in terms of verifying the income, the credit risk, all that kind of stuff. Is that a standard lender that do this kind of arrangement?
Well, absolutely. So we have a lot of clients that their whole family buys, let's say a 3-family home, 4-family home, each one lives on a certain level, okay? You can qualify mortgages, there's a lot of mortgage products out there. Loan to value ratio can be quite high. Loan to value ratio, let's say you buy $1 million home and you're doing a $900,000 loan, that's 90%. That's a 90% LTV. Some of the lenders can lend up to 90%, even 100%. So you can buy 4 people, 4 friends, buy a 4-family home, each one lives on a level. But the caveat is if they want to sell, right, then all 4 have to agree. But the truth is you can do an LLC. So if you form an LLC in a corporation, you can sell the shares of the LLC along with the corporation to respective other parties. So let's say one person wants to leave the house, they don't want to own the home anymore. And depending who's on the mortgage, you have to look at the whole technicality of who's on the mortgage. But then they can sell their shares to someone else and work something out the lender to remove their name from the mortgage. So it is possible for 4 friends to buy a 4-family home and commingle their money into buying something that they buy and then appreciate. Because the rental thing is tough. Because I understand when people have limited capital, where they get the financing, where they stable income can only be a certain thing, but then the whole vicious cycle of renting. If you're renting, you're always throwing money out the door. People want to put money into a mortgage so they actually put equity in the home and so they retire. But then again, there are a lot of products out there right now that permit you to have a high LTV, high loan to value ratio. So even if you have very little down payment, you can still qualify for a loan. It's just taking a risk, but if you work with someone else that has some capital, then you lessen your risk. So it's definitely one of those pros to have a partnership in order to move forward.
If somebody wants to do that, do they approach a lawyer to do that? Or is there certain type of lawyers who help you? Or do you go straight to a mortgage lender to do that? How do you find somebody you trust to do that with?
So number one thing is you go to a lawyer to probably draft up agreements, right? Number 2 is go to a lender that you trust also. Usually my office, that if you were to approach me and you want to do something of nature, I would refer you to a loan officer that we work on day in, day out, that are honest and know what they're doing, and they actually explain to you and provide you certain products in order to qualify. Yeah.
Are there investors that would actually entertain investing in an LLC with trusted people, like Christians who are entrepreneurial? Because a big problem we have in the ministry, this happens all the time. And it's not just in ministry, it happens in business. So I'm talking to a guy at Pratt today. He lives in my building. He's a lawyer. He can't get his kid into school. And he's going to get a private school. He's a lawyer. His wife works for a business. I mean, they have a lot of income, but it's Manhattan, so it's rough, right? He's like, I'm going to have to move to Connecticut to put my kid in the school that I want him to go to. Very typical scenario for people, and he can afford to move to Connecticut. There's other people who just stay here and they have to put up with it, right? But the point is, one of the things that is in ministry, I train ministry leaders, and it's really hard for ministry leaders to stay in the city for these reasons. Is it anything attractive as an investment at all to providing capital to people that are trusted to increase stability, to increase the platform of workers and the volume of ministry leaders so they can have longevity of ministry in the city? Or is that just not realistic in the capital system?
I think if you go to any specific person, everyone's all for the money, right? If you go to some people, they're more altruistic, that they want to help out, lend money, and really further any kind of Christianity and for the kingdom of God, so to say. So it really depends on who you approach. I would say most lenders, most people, they're thinking, does this analysis work? Am I able to make money on this? Can I sell this in the future? So on and so forth. Most of my clients that are investors, they always buy properties below market value. So they're not interested in certain things that like it's too much red tape through it. Can you find people? Absolutely, right? Some people are more, so to say, benevolent, altruistic, willing to help out the good doers of the society. but it's far few between, I feel like, in New York, because everyone's in it for themselves these days. Right?
But theoretically, if you say, I can point to people in this room that I think are good with this.
Yeah.
Theoretically, is it a reasonable investment? Because I know people have the money,
Right.
but I want to know, is it a reasonable investment? These guys right here, they'll pay the money back. They
Right.
have degrees, they have jobs, they can do it. I know them. But what I'm wondering, is it, I think you're saying it is theoretically, it's a reasonable investment. Maybe it's not going to be a 20% return, or maybe it's just a 5% return. Maybe it's a bond portion of the portfolio. But is it something, or is that just a pipe dream? That's not possible.
There's people out there that are private lenders that lend money, but they charge ridiculous rates. Sometimes right now in this market, like 12%. I just did a hard money loan for about 20-something%. Okay, so it varies depending on degree to degree. You have to find that right investor, right lender that's willing to lend. But then they can qualify for standard loans right now, so it's not a problem. But I don't think they need to go to the private equity side at all. You go into the institutional lenders to help out with that.
That's all.
Okay. Yep. Mm-hmm.
If you use an LLA and you want to, LLC and you want to buy a piece of property, do the people who give out loans to institutions, do they treat you differently? Are you at a disadvantage than if, say, you were like a private individual trying to buy a property?
So it
So
depends.
one family or two family?
Right. So it depends on the lender. So some lenders, when you use an LLC, they could treat it like a commercial loan. And a commercial loan, your rate is higher. It's not a fixed rate. But some actually consider an LLC as your individual if it's your primary home or secondary home. I remember I did a couple of loans with TD Bank and PNC, and they used LLC, and they still treat it as a secondary home, and they were able to get a 30-year fixed rate at a reasonable rate. So it depends on the lender we go to. So, but it's definitely possible with LLC. Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
If I was going to buy a multi-unit complex, what is a favorable credit score you want to have, or credit report you want to have, and what are the favorable amount of inquiries you want to have?
For yourself or for the tenants?
For myself.
For yourself.
Instead of buying multi-
So every lender is a little different. They prefer 700 credit score and above. Inquiries are not a huge issue unless there's a lot of inquiries. They mostly look at your credit score and your DTI, which is your debt to income ratio. So if you have too much liability on your credit report, they consider you as a high risk. But they also factor in, when you buy a multifamily unit, the whole entire income for the building. So they have something called a debt coverage service ratio. So if it's under a certain ratio, they're able to lend money. But it depends what the income is, what the expenses are, and they calculate everything. So you might not even worry about your own credit score, only if you're a personal guarantor. A lot of people buy buildings based upon the debt service coverage ratio of the entire income for the building, and it has nothing to do with your own income. So you're able to buy that. But then one of the items is you have to be mindful of the tenants. As I mentioned before, New York is one of the worst states to evict a tenant. If you have a bad tenant, a rent control tenant, not rent stabilized, a lot of people that rent stabilized are relatively rent controlled, then you're looking at very low rent. Rent controlled is a thing in New York State that tells people that you can only charge rent like $500, $300 per month, and the only way to get them out is when they die or they voluntarily leave. Rent stabilized is something that every single year you're able to increase rent, but as per New York City guidelines, you're able to rent 2 or 3%. If you buy a multifamily building that's rent controlled that has anything like that, usually sell for much less. You're in the long run, long haul, you're probably negative for until they leave. But then the house usually sells for a good discount if it's rent controlled, right? But you can buy it. Just look at the lender if they're willing to lend for the debt along with the income for the building. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thoughts on churches investing in property as an investment tool, if they may have some extra cash, like thoughts to that versus individual, what differences? Just love to hear your thoughts.
I have my thoughts about churches buying property. So the other day we went to church, and one of the pastors was talking about how his congregation had 300 people, and the other one had like 310. Okay, it's good to create more congregation. To buy more real estate means you can attract more people to attend the service, and at the same time, I guess give a better sermon, have more income coming in, and just at the same time make the whole church better as a whole. Would they buy a real estate? Yes, but I feel that there's a lot of churches out there these days that kind of And it's not something saying bad about certain churches. It's just that they take the money and kind of lose sight of what they're actually trying to provide for the people. As in, they're too worried about the income. They're too worried about making people happy, as opposed to giving them the nitty gritty about Christianity, so to say. So would I say them acquiring properties in New York, good thing? Yes, of course. If they have extra money, then apply for it. Lenders are relatively more reasonable regarding churches because they have a whole large reserve. And at the same time, they have a certain amount of income coming in. They can see the tithing and so on and so forth. So yes, it's a good thing. I would say it's a good thing. Right.
Are there tools available? You mentioned tenants in a property. Are there tools available that you can discern within that property? And like, how do you get that information? Or is this just something you kind of have to like smooth out? You know?
So let's say you're looking at a property, it's a 6-family home in like, let's say Queens, and then you wanted to find out if it's a bad tenant. You can ask the seller, the landlord, if you ever run their credit report or credit score before, right? I would say most people did not. But if they did, you can try to run it again without their knowledge, but they're not supposed to, okay? Because you know how you have the information already, so you have to run it online, annualcreditscore.com, right? So you can discern who it is and see if they're getting into a troublesome building. Have people bought troublesome buildings? Absolutely. And how do you get them out? Usually you either coax them out, you start eviction proceedings, or you give them money. You don't know how many cash for keys agreements I made during COVID, because in Queens, the calendar was 2 years backlog, okay? So they needed to get the tenant out. And we were paying out tenants $10, $20, $30, $40, $50, $200,000 just to get out, So it really depends on the tenant along with the building. But again, don't detract from buying a property. New York is one of the best states to buy a property. Are there other states that increase in value? Absolutely. But New York is one of those places that people gravitate to because it's in New York. Whenever I go on vacation to anywhere else, I always come back to New York and see the diverse amount of food, the people, everything's here. So there's nothing compared to New York. And that's why the real estate here is still very strong. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Any questions, guys?
What are the common investments that you see in people who are just starting out? So like, this, we're talking about real estate, this is what people who are looking to potentially partner with other people and investing in real estate property. What are some of the deals that you see?
Okay. So that's like a two-part question. So for individuals, I see a lot of people buying co-ops as their initial way into the gateway of real estate property and being an owner. Co-ops, I'll tell you the following, there's a lot of red tape involved with that. Buying, you have to go through the board application, you have to go through this nonsense of making sure the board is okay with you. And after you go through the interview, they're okay with that, and then you're a unit owner. There's a lot of red tape also being at a co-op. They look at guidelines, they make sure you're there. I have a client that right now is kind of in litigation with the co-op, saying that she's not living there for a certain number of days and wants to kick her out. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. She got married, she's like moving away type of thing. And they want to kick her out because the president looks at the feed every single day and say, you only live there 187 days as opposed to like whatever. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. So co-ops are one of those avenues. When you sell also, there's a lot of red tape. The liquidity of co-ops is very difficult because if you want to sell below market value, they will not let you. You have to sell for their own price. So I'm not saying co-ops are a bad thing. If you live in a co-op, it's a good primary home. It increases in value eventually, but not as much as a condo. Condo generally appreciate a little better, okay? Now going back to your question is, what do partners generally buy into? What kind of properties? I see a lot of partners buying into multifamily dwellings, right, that have a good cap rate. So the proper cap rate, which is the capitalization rate for any property, is 5%. That's like calculating the income minus the expenses and everything like that and divide it into what you purchased it. And a 5% cap rate is one of those things that people strive for. Now in Queens, the normal cap rate is like a lot of Flushing properties are 1 or 2%. People work on appreciation. So if you were to put your money into a CD, you can make 4 or 5% right now, which is really good right now, okay? It used to be like point something. But what people want is not only the capitalization rate of 5%, they also want the appreciation. So you get double the amount of windfall. Now you're getting paid 5%, at the same time your property appreciates. So multifamily dwellings are one of those things along commercial properties are the best way to get that, because you get a 3 to 5% cap rate, and at the same time you get appreciation on that, okay? And because you could get a tenant inside. For co-ops, you generally cannot rent them out. Are there co-ops you can rent out? Yes, but they're far and few between. I would say about 5%, 3% of co-ops you can rent out. Condos you can rent out whenever you want to, but they don't appreciate as much. The number one thing that appreciates the most right now is a one-family home. A detached one-family home is appreciating a good amount. Commercial properties, no matter what, that's always appreciating, and that's why I go into that chart over there. Whatever money you put into 20 years ago, it's guaranteed to be 3 to 4 times in the New York City area. Long Island is a different story, okay? Right? Ever since COVID, it went up a lot. But partnerships, mostly commercial level, I see a lot, right? Not residential level. But sometimes what they do is they buy a property, fix and flip. So the BRR, right? The BRR method. They buy, rehabilitate, and sometimes just sell it rather than actually refinancing. So I see that a lot with the partnerships. Yeah.
Sorry. I already asked. Please. Oh, okay. In your informed opinion for the 5 boroughs of New York City, what do you see in terms of like the short-term market? Because say we're considering to buy in the next year or two. Any tips, any your informed opinion on how the market will go? Should we wait for the interest rate to go down? Should we wait for the price in New York to go down? Does the price even ever go down in New York?
So I've been an attorney for almost 16 years now, and I've seen my clients many regrets, okay? They say, oh, I'm gonna wait till the price goes down. It never goes down. It just comes going up and up and up. And then when it's down, they're like, oh, I'm too scared, the economy's bad, I can't buy right now, okay? So this is what I tell clients all the time, just buy it. You can always refi it later on. So if you see a house that you really like, just buy it and call it a day, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions. First question, what would you say are 3 or 4 good metrics to kind of evaluate a good multifamily deal?
I would say location, right? The cap rate. That's really it. Those are the 2 metrics I would say, the cap rate along with the location. Because they always say location, location, location. That's always 3 right there, right? The thing with any good property is it sells for really quickly. It doesn't matter where it is. Location is number 1 thing. If it's in a good area, people will buy it like crazy. As I mentioned before, good properties sell within a day. Bad properties sit on the market forever. So if the cap rate is good, the location is really good, tenants are actually good, then that's it. It's a good multifamily unit. But you have to look into the area because ever since 2000, I think it was 17 or 18, when they did away with certain rent stabilization codes, like you couldn't change it from rent stabilized to free market, a lot of multifamily properties went down. But during COVID, it was kind of uptick a little bit, but they're still relatively affordable still to this day. 6 family, 8 family, 4 family, and so on and so forth. But it's a good investment because I see a lot of people, they rent out, let's say it's a 4 family, they rent out 3 of them and live in 1, right? That's good. That's good. You're able to pay the mortgage with these 3 tenants inside and then you live there yourself. Yeah.
Second question, do you know any good lenders for commercial properties?
Yeah. So just email me on the business card and I'll send you a whole slew of lenders for commercial properties. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, no problem. Yeah.
Are there any opportunities with what's happening in Manhattan for investors with all the office space? For some of it residential, which is tough because you know the services for residential. But I was seeing something about that. Is that something that you're familiar with?
You mean commercial rental spaces many of them are vacant right now and convert them into rental?
I saw something about desire to some incentives maybe even forthcoming to convert these to residential.
It's a possibility. I mean, I would say that commercial, ever since COVID happened, a lot of people started working from home, remote working, and there was a huge, I guess, exodus, so to say, from Manhattan, and everyone started working from home, either upstate or whatever it may be. Conversion, they have to change the CO for the entire building. So let's say your floor says commercial CO. CO is legal use of a specific building. If the certificate of occupancy says commercial, you can't use it as a residential, then you get penalties. They change them out, turn into lofts, rent it out. Residential is one of the best things to rent out. Everyone needs a home. Not everyone needs a commercial space. Brick and mortar is getting far less and less now. Ever since Amazon started dominating, you see all these brick and mortar stores closing up now. So residential is people need to live somewhere, especially work-wise. So residential we is number one. That's why commercial lenders always categorize residential properties as safer as opposed to commercial. Because the economy goes down, then people can't pay rent for commercial, but they always need a place to live, so they'll still continue to rent for the residential. Yeah.
Is it cost prohibitive to think, I guess it depends on how much money you have, but the legal fees to try to get a CO changed in today's environment, is that just astronomical? Or is that
No, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. It's just they would probably change the CO for the entire building, which whether or not they want to spend on it, because they also have to renovate the whole entire building too, because most commercials are like this. It's just a box. And then to make it nicer residential, you have to spend XYZ amount of money, renovations, nice flooring, the bedding, the decoration, cosmetic type of things. Also pipe in the gas, because a lot of them don't have gas and you have to use electric. So if you use electric, then you also have to have exhaust. And there's a whole slew of codes you have to follow in order to convert a commercial into a residential. Dave?
This is a simplified question. If a church bought a warehouse, which is in a commercial district, just retrofit it, turn it into a church, but then put residences above it, how would that work? Because I understand that zoning laws don't necessarily always apply to churches, but then they are putting residences in there.
So you possibly, if the zoning laws don't permit it, right, depending on the area, and also how it's zoned. There's some actually industrial areas that are also industrial and also residential, depending on the zoning. If it doesn't apply, you have to apply for a variance. Okay, you go to the boarding zone appeals and ask for variance. A variance is like, give me an exception, a variance, and let me build it because I'm a church. I'm a not-profit organization, and they generally let it. There's all these residential and also one commercial, or a huge building commercial, because they apply for a variance to allow that one building to build commercial on it. But also vice versa. All commercial, all of a sudden one big ass residential type of thing. Same thing. So you apply for a variance if you want to do it. And they'll probably agree to it, but then you have to hire an attorney and do it a variance proceeding.
In this case, it would be reversed, right? It would be a commercial district that would now
Yep, same
have
thing.
an exterior that looks commercial, inside you have residence.
Exactly, same thing. You apply for a variance for that. A commercial district, and you apply for a residential variance for that specific building. So it's a mixed use. First floor as in house of God or assembly, right? And for church, and then the second floor is just residential usage. So it's doable.
Who would say the legal fees are involved in that for a dwelling, say, this size?
Oh, I don't know. I don't really handle those kind of things. So I don't do litigation, mostly transactional. So I can refer people, I can look around and ask people, yeah.
Do you recommend investing overseas?
Absolutely. The economy for the United States is kind of iffy these days. I mean, the turmoil, and I was talking to Jonathan before, it's kind of weird here. It's a lot of chaos and chaotic things. Overseas is, depending on where you buy the property, it could be worthwhile, especially Airbnb type of thing. But another thing regarding management company, let's say you buy, I just went to Portugal not too long ago. Portugal was one of those places that it was very nice there. The properties were the same price as New York, but I could see myself going there one day and living there, right? Problem is, if you have a tenant there and you need to fix the light bulb, how are you gonna fix it, right? You're gonna hire a management company. So overseas is fine, but the same thing, you have to get a proper management company, proper people to take care of the building or property. If you buy a condo, then it's less problems. Like I know people that buy Hawaii condominiums, and they just did away with certain Airbnb there, but they do it somehow on the DL, so to say. And then Hawaii condominiums actually rent for decently well. So overseas is okay, yeah.
This kind of interest rate environment is just like picking a fixed rate or just a fixed rate?
So a lot of my clients right now, they are going to adjustable right now. So what it is the first 5 years is fixed, and then after the 5 years, it's adjustable. They're thinking that, okay, I get a lower rate right now, and after the end of the 5 years, I'm gonna refinance anyway. So it might be beneficial for them to get an ARM, adjustable rate mortgage, as opposed to a fixed rate, which is higher. I have clients that do stated income loans that do fixed rate, and the rate is like 9 point something percent, which is ridiculous, okay? But they want stability. They want to make sure they get a fixed rate for the entire 30 years. Is it a smart thing to do? Absolutely not. You know, I advise clients certain respects, but when the loan officer says, hey, this is the best for you, they sometimes agree with it, and I'm not going to say that's wrong, right? So, but I think ARMs are good. ARMs are good, adjustable rate mortgages. Yeah.
So I'm a full-time pastor. I don't have a lot of money. I don't have a lot of time. I have some money to invest. What would you say I should start with?
Side hustle. Side hustle. I'm just kidding. So, so you could do a full-time pastor type of thing, but then you can always invest in certain businesses. I feel like real estate is too slow sometimes. And I'll be honest with you. Businesses are relatively, there's so much more money to be made in certain businesses. So go into that partnership with your friends into a certain business, where it's e-commerce, making a t-shirt business, something, right? Because real estate is one of those things where when people retire, they kind of put their money in real estate. It's just slow and stable and steady. Does it make money? Absolutely. But then businesses make more money, okay? Your rate of return for a successful business is much higher. Your rate of return for a successful property is probably only 10%, right? The amount of money you put into a business, you can make like 100% back every single month if you do it right. So I recommend that if you're interested in partnering with any friends, do a business. That would generate the most amount of income. Stock market, crypto, yes, that can possibly do it, but then I don't know. If I had a crystal ball of the stock market going up and down, then I would put my money in there. To this day, I always drive by those psychics, right? Those psychics, you drive by those big like small buildings. I was like, why are the buildings so small? If they were real psychics, then the building would be much bigger, right? Right? So that's my take on that.
You mentioned paying down your principal early on mortgages.
Yeah.
If you locked in a pretty low rate, like say 3%,
Yeah.
would it still be advisable to pay it down early?
Heck no. My wife to this day wants to pay off my mortgage on the home. We have like a 4% loan. I said, no, I'm not doing that. Because we're in an economic thing where our rate is 6.5% or low sixes right now for a third-year loan. And at the same time, you make about 4% in the doing a CD minimally. So I tell my wife, I'm not going to do that because I put my money in appreciating assets instead of depreciating assets. And I take that money and I move it elsewhere to make more money, right? And make more than 4%. So I don't recommend paying it off. But some people want stability, so it's definitely up to you what you want to do. Right?
So in terms of investment and outcome, frankly, there's two options. One is doing a restaurant business in New York City, and open maybe next 3 years. And other option is right now with housing, investing there,
Okay.
and having an outcome from there in 2 years.
Yeah.
Which one do you think is better as a buyer consideration?
It's either or, not both, right? Either or. Okay.
Either or.
That's hard to say because the Buffalo house would be more stable, okay? That's stable income. The restaurant can be a money pit, okay? So if it was me in my current, like how I am right now, I would go for the restaurant because I'm more risky these days, okay? But if you have limited income, right? Either or, you decide, right? Some people that risk it all and make a lot. Some people risk it all and lose everything, right? So it's your risk aversion. Sometimes you're willing to take more with less. So up to you. Everyone's different. Yeah, no problem. No.
Sorry,
Don't worry about it.
would it be wise to apply for a private loan to pay the down payment for this loan?
So that's a good question. So if you were to borrow money from someone, a private lender, and the rate is like 10 or 15%, something ridiculous, right? You have to be 100% sure that the property is going to be appreciating more than what you're paying in interest, okay? If you're paying like 10% interest on everything, and your property is not appreciating 10% per year, you're losing money every single year. So you have to make sure that calculation is proper. But you can always get that hard money lender to give you a down payment and try to maybe renovate the building and refinance some more and get at a lower rate and to pay off the hard money lender. So that could work out, like the Burr method. buy, rehabilitate, and then also refinance it. So it's doable. It's doable. Only if you can see the market right now. Right now the market is kind of very shaky right now. I know there's more buyers versus sellers right now, but then no one really knows how the economy will be. So a lot of people are kind of just sitting back and waiting and just putting all their money into the CDs. I have some developers of mine that they don't know what they're doing right now. They're looking at properties, everything's too expensive. So they're just sitting and waiting, and they're making 4 to 5% on their CD in the bank right now. So it depends on your risk aversion. For me, I would just wait and see, right? Until maybe the rates went down a little more. But I was just telling before that it's never a wrong time to buy. If you see it, just buy it. But then definitely do the calculation beforehand. You don't want to be underwater day one. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You said that investing in businesses would be a better return.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of businesses?
So a lot of my clients, they do a lot of hodgepodge of businesses, and this is just the brick and mortar type of stuff. Now, I always do the analytics for a lot of my clients doing this. Laundromats, right, make a decent amount. Restaurants, depending on how they do it. If they have more liquor sales, it's pretty good. Liquor stores are very good. Again, these are all capital related, okay? And really any type of e-commerce, or in that nature. When you walk around Flushing, right, and I grew up in New York and I moved to Long Island. Initially when I was younger, I was walking around Flushing and it was really dirty. I'm like, wow, this place is really, really dirty, okay? Queens in general. And I went back to Long Island, like, oh, it's really clean here. But what I realized throughout the years is the people in Flushing and people throughout the whole entire Queens, and a lot of people, like diversity-wise, they're hardworking, okay? So they're so hardworking at their business, selling their goods, so it doesn't matter what they do, they just give 100% and they make money. I remember I had a nanny for my children, the nanny. I hired her to take care of my children, and she was telling me she was buying a property. I was like, okay, what kind of property are you buying? Oh, I'm buying $3 million for $1.5 million. I'm like, how much am I paying my nanny, right? She was buying a $1.5 million property. She was telling me that she was doing the family method. 3 family, 1 in each family. They all invested $500K into the home and they're buying it. I'm like, okay, that's good. So it's a good way to buy a property with other family, and business-wise, I feel like business are the best ways to make money. And you can look at anything. Right now, I would say that brick and mortar is very difficult. With the advent of like AI, so to say, and also the online wave, I feel like brick and mortar is kind of being phased out now. So for the future, I don't know. All I know is there's a metaverse right now, like a metaverse has another world, like things like that, because my son plays Roblox. I don't know what you know Roblox, what that is? Yeah. So it's like a little metaverse where they're walking around the avatar, and then my son always asks for money to buy like a suit or something like that. And I'm like, what are you buying, right? So I give him some money, and I'm like, does that money ever come back? Does it go both ways? Like I put money in, does it come back? He said, no. I'm like, why are you spending money like that? So again, I feel like in the future, the wave is gonna be what you look at the kids. And that's why when I hire younger people, I ask them, what's the new trend? Because if you don't actually follow their trend, you get left behind, you become the dinosaur. So although I'm not that old, right, I'm getting up there. So I always want to see what the kids are doing these days, and so you actually ride the wave. Right now, the biggest thing is artificial intelligence, and that's not easy to get into, obviously, right? But that's the newest wave of what people are trying to, I guess, provide, right? So any business is fine, yeah. We'll go with you.
What do you think of new developments as an investment property? So like, I've seen a lot of property with specific zoning that plays into, the 6, 7, 10.
So new developments as buying a new development, or developing yourself as a new development?
Yeah, developing yourself.
So the thing with developers, right? All my clients are developers. They always have no money, all the time. They have like all these assets they're sitting on. Like they always tell me in Chinese, I have no money, I have no money, I have no money. I'm like, why? Because all my money is in my development. And I'm like, okay. So that way of living is really tough because they have multi-million dollars into development, and when they sell, they make a lot of money. But they're kind of addicts, okay? When I mean addicts, as soon as they sell that property, they put more money into different properties. So they're always poor. They have no money, but they have so much in assets. So when I say development is very good, absolutely. We have partners that develop 1-family homes to 2 families, 3 families, 4 families, and develop up from the ground. We have other developers, which I invest myself with my clients, is we do a rehab and turn to a condo, and the rate of return is very good. So I would say that developing is a good thing. Are there going to be hiccups? Absolutely. So I'll give you an example. My friend of mine, and which is my client also, he said to me, if we buy this property, you're going to triple your money. Okay, I was like, okay, that sounds really good. Too good to be true. I put some money in, a lot of DOB issues, a lot of issues. It took pretty much a 1.5 to 2 years just to get the certain permits. Eventually, after 3 years, it was done selling. Did I triple money? No, I 1.5 times my money, okay? Still good, but if you amortize to a 3-year spectrum, it's actually not that good, okay? So development-wise, the caveat is always the red tape. DOB is a huge issue regarding not permitting certain things, and at the same time nitpicking every tiny thing. During COVID, they were nitpicking if you didn't have a hand pump sanitizer in the front of the building, they're going to fine you $5,000 or something like that. That's nonsense, absolute nonsense, right? I remember I got fined $1,000 because during COVID I didn't have all the logs properly. So you're supposed to have a temperature gauge in the front. You're supposed to have a safety log, and you're supposed to have a safety protocol. I didn't have the safety protocol, but I had the temperature along the safety logs and cleanup logs. And so here's a $1,000 penalty. I'm like, again, DOB, is a big issue right there.
Can you just touch upon that, what you said before about converting into a condo?
Yeah. So some of my clients, they, let's say they develop like a 6-family home. You buy a 6-family home, and it's relatively newer home, okay, not one of those old ones that need a lot of renovations. They go to the AG office and convert it to a condominium and sell each one, okay? There's a lot of certain things they need to represent with the AG office, and they're able to make certain good money with that, okay? But again, you have to spend the capital in order to renovate it to turn to a condominium. Doable, but you have the right to find the right property. Now, a lot of my clients build from the ground up. Rather than find a home that's a fixer-upper, they tear down the whole thing and build it straight up, and then they make it to a condo and make decent profit. The condo market in New York is still very strong, right, versus other states. So they always make money on it, and there's a lot of incentives and subsidies by the government by building. So they only make money on the sale end, also for the governmental end to infuse money in, right? Yes. It has to be a certain number of units for the building, right? Okay.
What are some things that you can look at when considering the property value of a home? Are there resources out there? And are those resources reliable? For example, if you're already a homeowner, the government already sends you, the Department of Finance, an annual assessment. Is that actually accurate?
I'm going to say the assessed value is absolutely not accurate, right? Whenever I see a property that I have, and let's say I bought it for $1 million, and they assess value for like $300,000, I'm like, what is this? I didn't buy it. $1 million property for $300,000. The assessed value is just one of those indicators in how they assess the value of a home for tax purposes. Now, your first question was, is there an indicator of how you value a certain home? The truth is, there's really no indicator. I mean, you go to Redfin and Zillow, they have the like fair market value in the right corner or left corner, but the truth is, the market value is what people are willing to pay for it, okay? So if a house is worth $1 million, market value, and someone's willing to pay $2 million, then it's worth $2 million, okay? If something's worth 1.5, then it's worth 1.5, so to say, someone could pay for it. It's what people are willing to pay for. One of the biggest items is the advent of the internet, okay? With the advent of the internet, you can see prior histories of what houses sold for in the area. And because of that, people are like, oh, I want to buy this house for 1.2 because the next door neighbor sold for 1.2, right? It's good and bad because you don't know the circumstances behind the cost along with the transaction, because some people, they put a low price on the internet, but they really sold for the back end much higher. So there's no right way of valuating a certain property. I mean, there's some formulas of how people evaluate certain refinance properties when they do the BRRRR method, right? Like they do the cap rate and they do the rehab thing and they divide it by all this stuff, and they say, this is my property's worth and I can sell for this amount of money. Does it work all the time? It's okay, but there's a lot of formulas regarding that. But
if you already have a mortgage and you decide you want to sell for a bigger place, would you be able to use the unused part of your mortgage on a new place? Same rate?
Transfer?
Yeah.
So yes and no, depending on the lender. Sometimes they're willing to take that loan and move it to the other house, right? But most of the time, no. Most of the time, no. But you could try it if the lender's willing to do it, because like, okay, we're willing to do it, then okay. But yeah, most.
If it requires the purchase price much larger,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, they think consider it a new application. So if the rate is 3 or 4% and you want to transfer over to a new home, that's golden right there. But no. What happens a lot is if you sell your home and then the buyer comes in, they can assume that loan and your house is actually worth more. Say, hey, I sell this home for $800. If you give me an extra $100K, I'll transfer this loan to you called a CEMA. CEMA is acronym for Consolidation and Extension Modification Agreement. Transfer that loan to you, and you're able to get this benefit 3%. And say, hey, you're going to save like $200,000 in the long run, but give me $100K now, and we'll call it even, right? So, it's doable. So let's say you own a one-family home, and you have a loan of 3% or 4% right now, and the current rate right now is 6.5%. You can go to the buyer and say, I'm going to sell you this home with the mortgage intact, same rate, and transfer it to you. The transferring is called a CEMA, Consolidation Extension Modification Agreement. That's the acronym, right? You transfer to them, there's a nominal fee with that, so they not only get the benefit of the new mortgage, but you can add a premium on the house. So if the house is worth $800,000, you say, hey, give me $100K now, $900,000 for the whole entire home. You save $200K in the back end because the loan is so good, and everyone's happy, right? Yeah, no problem.
Looking at my 4-family houses in New York.
I don't know where the 4-family houses in, like Corona has a bunch, Elmhurst has a bunch. Really anywhere you look in the city, it's everywhere, 4-family homes.
How do you find just 4-family? Zillow doesn't have that option.
So I'll tell you the following regarding commercial properties, because 3-family and below considered residential, 4-family homes are considered commercial aspect. Those are LoopNet, okay? LoopNet properties are garbage, okay? Absolute garbage. If they're on the internet, then that means they're hard to sell. It's all relationship based, okay? Commercial properties, if you see a good property, you just say, I want to buy that property. If you see on the internet, most likely it's not a good property, okay?
3-family is what I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's what 3-family. That's what you're looking for.
So if you're like a young entrepreneur, most of like, you start out with e-commerce and then your brand blew up, and then is it better if to just do commercial, like rent it for your studio, or like, because I know a lot of brands just like rent at WeWork for their studio design, or do you think it's worth it to entertain owning an actual physical space?
So
in the neighborhood that you want to invest in.
Right. So this is the rent versus purchase comparison. Now this is what I consider the rent for commercial items are. It's always best to own, but not necessarily. I'll tell you why. If you're spending so much money on the commercial aspect, you're not able to grow the business with your capital. Okay. So business-wise, you can make much more money as opposed to commercial. But once you get to the point where you're like, I have enough disposable income to buy that property, go right ahead. No one wants to pay rent forever. But when you're first starting out, do the rental probably first, because your rate of investment is actually much less as opposed to buying the property, because you over leverage yourself, you stretch yourself out, and it'll affect your health. So.
And that the business would own the commercial space?
Yes. Definitely up to you. I always say that if you can afford it, buy it. But if you're starting a new business, definitely just rent for the time being, because you actually pigeonhole yourself at that specific location. The good thing about rental is you can pick up and leave. So if that business is bad in that specific area, you can move to a different area. Right.
Are you work with clients that do like NACA or FHA loans for like the 3-family thing?
Yeah.
Like, is it hard? I'm listening to podcasts on it. I'm like, it sounds really great, but it's like you gotta go through a bunch of loopholes and everything. And in your experience, what has it like?
I would say if it was easy, it's not worth doing. Okay. FHA loans, 203K loans, Sonny Mae loans, all very good. You go to high LTV ratio. If you qualify for that, go ahead and do it. There's a lot of subsidies and incentives to do that. So if you were to go that way, it's golden. It's golden, right? But that's up to you. 203K loans are rehab loans. So they give you extra money to rehabilitate the house, but then it's also a higher rate too. So it depends on your risk aversion type of thing. Mm-hmm.
What about NACA?
knocked down?
Class with program.
NACA?
NACA.
Oh, I don't think I'm familiar with that. No. I'm sorry, I saw it, but is it a subsidy type of thing?
It's similar to FHA, but like higher.
Oh, okay, right. Not very familiar with all mortgage products these days. Yeah, it's all good. Mm-hmm. All right.
You got time maybe for one more question if anybody has a question. Can we give Albert a big thank you?
Thank you, guys. No problem.
And one of the reasons why we chose to do these finance workshops was just in a practical, as board members who are also ministers and pastors, just seeing the need within our churches, seeing the need within our communities to create some of these resources and to have some available, but also because we here at Queens Connexus just have a vision and a desire to see the kingdom of God advance. And we know that a lot of that has to do with finances. And so we desire for our people and for the church as a whole to be financially healthy for its own sake, for your family's sake, but also because we recognize when we make wise financial decisions and have stability, we're able to then be more generous to just see other churches planted and see the kingdom of God advance. And so our prayer for you is that you yourself would continue to learn. And as we look at these workshops, even today, like there's so many questions of how to and next steps. But one of the things that's most beneficial, even from this whole idea of investing in property together or investing in business together, is that there are ideas that I didn't even know was possible. Like I never considered partnering with someone to buy property or a house together because I've never seen that. And so like I didn't even know that was a thing. And so a lot of it was just opening up ideas to see what's possible and then know, all right, I need to find someone like Albert or someone else who I know is knowledgeable in this, and then you can begin to take those next steps. And so we do hope that even if there's still a lot to be learned, just your mind was open to new possibilities of how you might be able to take care of your family and continue to invest in the kingdom of God.